Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, a 7th-year doctoral student in clinical psych, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou, and my pronouns are he and him, and I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol. I'm a former Miss Castro Country Club, and I am always in search of balance. And each week, we will provide and create a brave space where we can engage in conversations around topics of recovery.
Our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, comment, ding that bell.
Ding, ding, ding. And now the disclaimer. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on At the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The material and information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we are just friends behind a mic here to entertain you. Hey.
How's it going?
How's it going? How are
good.
you? And we have someone back today, Louis.
I know. It's like we didn't get enough of him, apparently.
Who are you?
Hi, my name is Manny. I'm a certified financial planner and financial life coach.
Say it again for the people in the back.
I'm also a recovering alcoholic.
Nice to have you back on. So for folks
Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Yeah. So for folks who may not be familiar with Manny or why Manny's back on, this is part 2 of our finances and recovery. If you're interested in catching the last episode, we have a shortened version of it that was put on YouTube on May 28th, 2023. So that's May 28th, 2023, finances and recovery. But before we jump in, how are the two of you doing?
I'm good. I'm great. It's like we just had Pride Weekend here in San Francisco, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, I've been doing Pride so long here in the city, I really know how to do it. I basically didn't do much of anything. I just did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I stayed out of people's way. That way, folks get to have their fun and whatever without my judgment. Because I don't have a poker face.
Yeah, you're pretty judgmental.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Manny,
I'm like trying to not say bad things about.
You can say whatever you want to say.
No, trust me. No,
I'm just kidding. I only have good things to say. And this is really weird. I have to keep doing
Yeah,
this.
you don't have to do that.
Yeah,
All right, I'll
Yeah,
just
yeah,
keep
yeah,
looking straight ahead.
Yeah, you just look straight ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, maybe we should think about that the next time. Maybe not put the guest in the middle because you would have to pivot.
No, I like it when they look silly. No, I love it.
But Manny, how was your weekend? How have you been since last we saw you?
My weekend was really great. It was exhausting. And you know what I thought about this. I'm like, I'm so tired. I'm sober, but I'm so tired. And then I thought about when I used to do Pride when I was still out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was probably 1,000 times more tired, but I still had the energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Had that FOMO thing going. It's like, I know I need to go home, but I'm not going.
Yeah. I don't have that anymore. But what kept me out was that my boyfriend had a bunch of friends visiting from out of town, and I was being, a very good boyfriend and making sure that I put in the time to make sure I get to know his friends too.
Yeah, I wonder if he's watching this.
Probably. Hi, Josh.
You better be.
I know, right?
That's really sweet. Yeah, this Pride was very different for me too. I for whatever reason, I was avoiding it. And so I chilled with my boo for most of it. We had breakfast and lunch and we watched the movie, and then he went and he did his own thing and I went and I did my own thing, and then reconvened and went to a sober thing, and then after that we had a really good time.
Yeah, it sounds very sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really sweet. It was a really nice it was really nice. It was a nice Pride for me. And then just in general, I've just been so exhausted. I've just been really tired. I have the proposal that I've been talking about for such a long time is due at the end of this week. And so I've been rushing to get that kind of stuff done.
When you said you were tired, it reminded me about hydrating.
Okay.
Are you hydrating?
Yeah, you didn't see that big thing of water that I was drinking?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here to help.
You are indeed here to help. So we're going to jump in. And so for a quick recap, so for folks listening, the last time Manny was on, we were talking about finances and recovery. And the reason why we asked him to come back was because the conversation was very rich. And one of the things that I took away from that conversation that felt very valuable was the importance of values. And so one of the questions that Manny posed, like the hypothetical that you pose is, am I spending money in a way that matches my values, right? And that was that came from the conversation about where does a person start, you know? And so I just wanted to start there. Louis was not on that time, so
I was making my way back from Palm Springs.
Yeah, could not be bothered. So he
Welcome back.
welcome back. So I want to start there. So could you give us a little bit of a recap about what you meant when you said, "Am I spending money in a way that matches my values?"
Yeah, absolutely. I typically find that when I see clients in distress around their finances, they've been in a pattern of spending that has been potentially like just automatic, and they haven't thought about it, which relates a lot to like alcoholism, right? Like it's you just find yourself in a behavior. And so the reason why I ask folks to be really clear on what their values are is so that we can make sure that the money is in alignment, like you're spending money on things that you actually want. And when you're more cognizant of like what your values are and what you're truly after, there's a lot less money left over for just, I don't know.
It's
Other
it's
things.
kind of cool. It sounds like the same concept of a sexual idea.
Oh, say more
Yeah,
about that.
well-
Yeah.
Well, no. If you don't know in the steps, one of the pieces in the 4-step we do, it's like a larger inventory, and we do a sexual inventory because I think a lot of times it's like if we have problems with our sex idea or whatever, we take a look at it. I like to say I'm a detective. We take a look at what's going on, and then in the sexual idea we think about what it is that we want from this, and we try to live up to it. And so I think in your that's really a good way to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'll have a client pull up their credit card statement and I will ask, like, oh, I see this big ticket item or I see this trip. Like, was the trip your idea? What was your intention to go on that trip? Or I saw that you bought this thing. What was your intention behind that? And usually it's people like, oh, that's just a subscription. I thought it was a good idea. I totally forgot about it. And I'm like, see, there's like moments where people can come to realize that they're spending money automatically and without really being conscious of it.
So I love what you're saying, and I want to actually take this conversation about relating it to like a sexual ideal step further. So what it makes me think of is like the nature of sexuality. And in a lot of ways, there are things that feel taboo. There are things we don't talk about. There are things we're afraid to admit we like or don't like. There are ways that like we can have sex dissociatively, right? I think the connection I
like all of those things.
Right. So Louis, I'm glad you're back. So basically I bring that up because I think there's an interesting connection here. And I think that the connection I'm making here is that in both situations, money can feel as charged as sexuality. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because one of the things that you mentioned during the last show was that you said, money is a form of energy exchange. It's how we exchange energy with each other. Right. And so, I wanted to highlight that connection because it does feel, and it's also something that we share with people, right? Like money is something that we can kind of throw at relationships or we can use very intentionally. Like this is money we're going to use to build together, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Money can be a symbol. Mm-hmm. It can be used to exchange energy, just like I said in on the last show. But it can be truly a charged topic, and it depends on the culture that you come from, the family that you're raised in, your background. All of that plays into it.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. So
it's
for
okay.
fun,
I need the help.
People, I feel like I'm very militant about the mics because when I'm listening, I hate when people fade away. So I just push the mic toward your mouth.
But the point that I wanted to get to is that you said it's taboo, and just like how people do not want to talk about sex publicly, typically. It's the same with money. Absolutely. Like you're not supposed to talk about it. And I think that's where people get into trouble.
What's your question?
And I'm pretty sure that you may have talked about it last time. How do you deal with the fact that like the shame? Because shame shows up. Like either I'm not making enough money or haven't been spending it the right way, and I don't feel comfortable. Like some of the struggles I've had, and I've been getting to a better place talking about it is how I've been spending my money and the fact that I'm having to clean up messes as a result of how I've been. How do you, when you're working with somebody on that, how do you get past that? Or I mean, how do you start the conversation?
My trick for working through shame is compassion. So first, be compassionate with yourself that you were in a different place mentally, and your behaviors and your choices were driven potentially through your addiction, right? So that was an old version of you. There's a new version of you now.
I like it.
And that person has to be compassionate to the old person who made those decisions. Because if you get stuck in this cycle of shaming yourself, it becomes a shame cycle and you don't get better. You keep prodding at the wound and not allowing it to heal.
Okay.
I like, sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
So just compassion. Be compassionate with yourself. Yes, work has to be done and behaviors need to change, but first you have to be compassionate with yourself.
Oh, I trust you. I also love you. So
I love you too. I love that I'm here again.
Yeah, I love. So what I'm appreciating about what you're saying and where I want to take the conversation is in the next part of what I'm thinking of is like, how do we identify our values, right? And one of the things that I'm appreciating about what you're saying is that you're talking like the energy I'm hearing behind the money conversation is that that money can be used as a tool, that it can actually be I don't know if controlled is the word. Yeah, I think controlled is the word that I'm thinking of here.
So think of money as another form of expression, right? Think about when people say like, I want to give money to that organization. Why? Because a part of their values line up with that organization's mission, right?
Right. And so and then we can talk about values. So part of at least what I'm taking away from this is that, when you have clarity about your intentions, or when you have clarity about, say, maybe like your identity or your values, how you use your money, actually, it's a lot less mysterious, right? Because you know where the energy is coming from, and you know the direction that you're wanting to take it in. So can we talk a little bit about how does a person identify what their values are?
Sure. One of the exercises that I do in my life coaching practice is I ask clients to describe to me like a peak experience. Describe to me a day where it was just like the most amazing day. And the things you use to describe that day are actually tips. They tell me what you find valuable, right? Was it because you were with someone you love? Was it because it was in a specific area? There are things that I pull out from that peak experience.
This one was saying with your boot thing, the way you had described your day.
Okay.
That
I was like, what are you doing right now?
No, that's a really good.
Yeah. I just got really protective. Go ahead.
No, absolutely. But no, it was like the way you described it. I feel like that was that.
No, 100%. Thank you for
Wow. Okay, so if you're not, this is what I get to deal with.
No, because it's so funny because there's some things I feel very protective of, and I feel very protective of him, and so I just anyway. So
and I would say, okay, looking at what you described earlier in the introduction, it's like, okay, so you value like a deep connection,
right?
You value downtime, right? So I could go on and on, but that's how I pull out what your values are.
Yeah.
So how does that relate to like money?
Yeah.
How do you want to use money to better connect with your boo?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll say, I'm going to set money aside for a vacation for both of us because I know we can better connect on that. That's what I mean.
I love your use of that. And to circle back to what Louis was saying, I do think there is actually Louis is nodding his head for people who can't see. Going back to like what Louis was saying, I think you're 100% right? Like for me, when I think back at that day, and to Manny's point, I think about like, oh, there was downtime. There was freedom to kind of coexist. There was freedom to do like what was important to both of us, and like as individuals, and like together. And there is a way that money, like if you look back at that day or any day, you can track where money was spent and how money was spent.
Yeah. And it's not even how the money was spent, but like, think about this, like the way you earn money allowed you time to have time off.
Right.
Right. So it feeds into every part of your life. You're making decisions with money all the time.
Yeah.
Consciously or not.
Yeah, I'm sweating so bad right now.
There's a takeaway. There's a takeaway underneath this that like is super important, especially for those of us who believe we're so self-sufficient.
Yeah.
asking for help.
Oh,
And
100%.
especially like, because like would have never thought to, the way that you're approaching this, I would have never thought that. And if I'm trying to come on that on my own, like I used to say, like, especially with my recovery, my sick mind can't heal my sick mind. I need to go outside of my sick mind to kind of at least address that I have a sick mind.
Right. Yeah.
100,000%. Actually, after this show, someone contacted me, like double-digit years of sobriety, and they said to me, like, I've never shared this with anyone, but I watched the show, and like you broke down that barrier for me that allowed me to call you. And I thought that was like
That's
so
wonderful.
rewarding.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
truth serum.
Well,
You're
it's
amazing.
yeah.
But he
Yeah.
said, I have like double-digit sobriety, and this is the shit that makes me want to drink.
Yeah.
Like, and it was rooted
Yeah.
in shame.
Mhm.
Finance and
Right?
romance.
And so like my approach is like really gentle, direct, but compassionate at the same time, so that like we can heal, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
make better decisions.
I love
Look at
that.
you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and to your credit, I feel compelled to say this on air. Like after the last show, I had a lot of different people who asked me, like, "Hey, how do I get a hold of Manny? Like, I'd really like, this. I like his approach." So to your credit, I feel like you've tapped something that's
Also, I think
really
it makes a
working for
difference
people.
that you're
Mhm.
like, it's easy to look at you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You can look at me some more
All
on
right.
YouTube at Manny Money Happy Coach.
love that.
Manny Money Happy Coach on
Do
YouTube.
it. Do it.
Shameless.
Yeah, no, we'll hopefully we'll be plugging your contact a few more times, but let's not get too derailed. Thank you, Louis. So we're gonna go.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna derail more. Okay.
That's okay. You can keep throwing compliments my way.
Okay. So going back to this idea of values. So you say that you start off by asking people what like their most amazing day is, and then from that you get information. So once you've identified a person's values, I think the second part of what you said is like, okay, how does that relate to money? Can you say more about that?
Yeah, sure. Like, so going back to that example about you spending time with your boo thing and maybe getting,
Here we go.
maybe spending that money on a vacation, if
Okay.
that's meaningful to you.
Yeah.
Downtime, like where can you find downtime?
Sure.
I'm not asking you right now.
Yeah. No, I know you're not.
Yeah,
I know you're not. Well, the other thing I'm hearing about too is like one of the conversations that I've been having a lot recently, because I have to start making decisions about my professional life, is how much downtime do I want? Right. And so I've thought about like, what kind of jobs am I looking at? Right. Like there are jobs obviously that I can make a lot of money in, but I'm like, oh, I'm not going to have all the downtime that I want.
100%. So there's a trade-off, right? Like you can make this kind of income, but what kind of hours are you going to be working?
Right.
And that's part of your value system.
100%,
because if you value the downtime, you're willing to make that trade-off, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're connecting those things to money. And so one of the things that I think is kind of hard to figure out for any person is thinking about where do we start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on one end, I think for some folks, it's like, well, I don't have that much money. So can I even, like, does this even apply to me? And one of the things you said in our last episode was like, absolutely. There is a way, like, even if you aren't making a lot of money, that you can make your money work for you. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So the best investment you can ever make is in your education, right? And there are ample resources online where you can educate yourself. You just have to have the willingness to look for it. And the beauty of YouTube is that you can find someone with a personality who looks nice, that is delivering the message that you need to hear. So what's that saying? Like when you're ready to learn, like the teacher shows up. And
there's no shame in however you approach it, just so long as you take the steps. Because I think I always thought like there's like the regret or the guilt that I would have is not doing it.
Yeah, and it's the willingness to put in the time and the effort.
The other thing that I remember you saying was that one place that a person can consider starting is like how looking at your finances, you don't have to make a lot of money, right? But at the end of the month, are you breaking even or are you spending more than you're making?
Yeah. And the best way to find out if you're doing that is to put together what I call a spending plan, which sounds nicer than putting together a budget.
Oh, nice.
A spending plan allows you to just match up. Like, am I really realistic about how much I'm spending eating out? Like that's what people like don't realize, that dining out is maybe like a huge part of their spending,
especially in recovery, because it's like a lot of us, we do fellowship and It's like
Yeah.
I recently had to take a look at that, and I was like, okay. And then on top of
And
that,
so what that does tell
Yeah.
me, okay, so that tells me that you value connection through your fellowship. Okay,
Mhm.
so you can do it without shame and guilt, so long as you're conscious about like, okay, X amount of my income goes to this, and I feel good about doing that, but I'm willing to make, like changes in other areas of my
Exactly.
life so that I'm
I'm gonna
not.
show up at the restaurant with my little sandwich and my hot sauce.
Well, I love this point
Yeah.
because one of the things I love doing, I don't spend money on a lot of things. I love spending money on eating. Like I love going out to eat. I love ordering in, like, and so I budget, or I plan to spend X amount of money. And so whenever I like Uber Eats or I don't ever feel guilty about it, because I was like, no, I made room for this. And there's a lot of freedom in that. Like it changes how I'm interacting. You know what I mean? Like it changes how I
you
have
can
the
enjoy
conversation.
it and not feel
Mhm.
guilty about doing it because you're
Yeah.
empowered. You've made that conscious decision to spend the money in that way. It's when people find themselves paying for things that they didn't really sign up for, saying yes to people that are asking for money when maybe they personally can't afford to, but feel compelled to because they have to.
Right.
But that's not
Like
maybe a
destination
value.
weddings. I hate destination weddings. I think they're so rude. Are you going to have a destination wedding?
No, it's like if I'm already there, I'll
Yeah.
come. But it's like that's it. So back to the whole value thing. One of the things that I did, like I have friends who like had good jobs and always when they go out they spend a lot of money and they always want to split, and that's fine when I have it. I made a conscious decision because of where I was at and how I felt to love those people, but to stop going out with them, because I realized that, I don't need to feel bad about the fact that I'm not able to do this. And also I don't need to, I don't want to make somebody else feel bad for the fact that they can do it.
Okay, so a few things are coming up for me
Yeah.
when you say that. There's this mentality that we have to like keep up with everybody around us, when the reality of the situation is not everybody starts with the same starting point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that person might not have student loan debt.
Yeah.
That person might have gotten a really good job through nepotism.
Yeah.
All of these different factors you don't know the
Yeah,
background.
exactly.
And so to judge someone on like what they have, judging your insides with everybody's outsides is a fool's errand, right? Because it's not an accurate way of measuring your whatever. And then also like there's things about like self-worth that can come up and like, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't work hard enough. And it's like, but were you given the opportunity to, and did you have the same, I don't know, privileges? So and that's where compassion comes in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, what this is bringing up for me is a conversation that Louis and I were having a little earlier today, which is that in the end, when it comes to like interpersonal relationships or things we see or hear, literally nothing has anything to do with us. Nothing. Like how somebody else is spending, how somebody else behaves or uses, it has nothing to do with us. And we get to make choices sometimes. And sometimes the choices that we make, sadly, are to tell ourselves stories about the things that we see, right? When we start to compare ourselves to other people, that is a story we are choosing to tell ourselves, right? And I think that like what it's also bringing up for me is like how there's a bit of like someone's mental state or mental health involved in how money is spent, right? One of the things that I wanted to kind of circle back to is going back to this idea of like, how do we start? And one of the things that I hear coming up with what Louis is saying and just kind of in the subtext of what we're talking about is money in relationships, right? So money between friendships or romantic lovers or like someone you're living with or roommates. Do you have any ideas about what that can look like or ways that people can think about it?
Yes. And I've worked with couples with very different money styles. So that's the first part, right? Be conscious that everybody's coming to the table with a different set of circumstances, right?
Yeah,
Just
we
like
all,
I talked
we all have
about,
a different
right?
sleep number.
Right? Exactly, right?
A what
So-
number?
Sleep number.
What is
Oh my
that?
God, are they like a sponsor?
Mattress. The mattress
Oh.
sleep number. Come on. Oh, I forgot. You don't even watch TV.
No, I don't. Go on.
I lost my train of thought
I'm
thinking about
sorry.
this freaking
No,
mattress.
you were talking about everyone. I was gonna say everyone has their different sleep number. That wasn't what you said.
Everybody
everyone has their
comes-
different
It's
spend
working.
style.
Everybody
Yeah.
It's so working.
Everybody comes to the table with a different money story that they're telling themselves. And most of it is developed in childhood with the people around us. So
Yeah.
like what you think about a dollar was probably shaped by how your grandma talked about a dollar,
Okay.
right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
all of those things you bring to the table. And now you're in relationship with a friend, a partner, a romantic partner,
Mhm.
and you have two very different money styles. And the best way you can have a conversation about it is to go like this. Give me your hands. Anthony,
Yes.
baby,
What?
I love you so much.
Uh-huh.
I know in the past talking about money with you has been kind of like a charged thing.
I hate this so much.
I just want to let you know that I love you so much.
Uh-huh.
And like, but I want to talk about blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
But no matter what, I still love you.
Okay.
Right. And so you've like,
You know what?
reduced the.
This is a sidebar, but I really feel like you were very intuitive because you, like, of the two of us, that is definitely more challenging for Anthony.
I'm like, what are you doing?
No, I
Stop.
think
Let
so.
my
And
leave me.
it's like
Did you see him
higher power is
squirm?
like
Did you see him squirm?
I know higher power
My
is in
shoulders-
too.
His palms are so
Yeah.
moist.
Uh-huh.
I hated every minute of that. Although I will say that, like in my relationship, that is generally how conversations are had, right? Like, there's a foundation laid out that, like, there's care here, like there's connection here, and that's like the premise of a conversation,
Sure.
which changes everything.
Yeah,
It's
and
a-
like you have to come to the relationship with this mutual respect for each other, transparency and honesty.
Right.
And that begins with honesty with yourself.
Right.
About like, are you spending more than you can actually afford? And that's like a moment where you need to be honest with yourself.
Right.
Right. And then you can bring that same kind of honesty and transparency into your relationship. It's when people are stretched too thin,
Mhm.
are making decisions because they feel that they have to make other people happy and living inauthentically, that people start butting heads when it comes to money and finance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying was like so right on, because I was thinking about like when we were in Hawaii, and I know that this has everything to do with the work that I've been doing, the step work. I had a number of conversations with you guys about some of the challenges I've been having around finances, and into what you were saying, like this having conversations with people. I've been able to tell people, like, most of my friends are like really generous, and they're all, oh no, I'll pay. And I've had to make a conscious decision to say, and it had to do with self-worth. I know you can do this, but I've decided that I don't need this right now. I need to make this sacrifice because I've always had situations where someone has been able to pick up the slack. And if I let that keep happening, then there's never going to be an opportunity for me to kind of step back and kind of grow up. You know,
I hear
and
that.
grow up. I don't need everything just because it's there. I don't need it. Like, I mean, I can survive. I can sustain. There was a time when, as long as I had a bus pass and something to eat and certain bills were paid, I'm good. All that excess was excess. It was, yeah.
Mhm.
I would, I want to add to that. And at the same time, like, I think we have to allow friends to be friends. Like, sometimes
absolutely.
we have to allow people. I know that was on the other end of that. Like, we have to allow people to show up for us. And sometimes, like, one of the rules that I have, for example, with lending money is I never lend money. I only give money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if someone is asking me for X amount of money because they want to, like, hey, can you lend me? I'm like, no, I can't lend you X amount, but I can give you X amount.
Yeah.
Right. And what I think that does is, one, it allows for me to be in relationship. And if I have it, then I can give it.
Mhm.
Number one. And number two, it takes the tension right out of that, because the
absolutely.
last thing that I want in my relationships is for money to be a source of tension or conflict.
Mhm. That's a
Um,
great strategy.
And it's good to
yeah,
know.
thanks.
That's a
But
pretty.
that's good to know.
You adding up what you need.
It's like,
That's so funny. Okay, so let's go back to money and relationships,
Mhm.
right? So what you're suggesting is that you establish some connection, you establish some safety first.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then be conscious of like, oh, my partner grew up in near poverty. Of course, they're going to be thinking that we're always living in scarcity,
Mhm.
despite our money situation today being very different.
Right.
Right. So being cognizant of like, oh, I think I get why you think we can't afford this, but let me But I think here's why, you can work around that.
You know what? The other thing I wanted to talk about is, so one of the conversations that we've had recently is like, how do we bring God into our relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm bringing that up because I feel like one of the principles I live by as a sober person is God is everything or nothing. So God is either in my relationship or is not in my relationship. God is in my finances. God is in all of my dealings. Right. And so I feel like there is a way to use money in a way that feels like it's centered in some sense of a higher power. Do you have an opinion about that or thoughts about?
That's a great question, Louis.
Well, you know what we're doing right now, because I believe the way that I speak to my higher power speaks to me, is I ask and I talk to people. And the meditation for me is to shut up and listen. And so I think that when I'm passionate about doing something, when I'm wanting to do something or wanting to spend money or wanting to save for something, I talk to someone about it, because that point when I'm not willing to talk about it, that's when I fall out of line with my higher power. Like when I'm not interested in what you have to say, like I've made my decision and I'm holding on to it. Usually a lot of times it's like I'm sharing and talking about it. I'm going to still do what I'm doing, but at least I'm open to hearing, maybe, that's probably not the best way to spend your money, or maybe you should try this, and I may not in that moment like respond the way I need to, but the way I've always kind of been, I'll brood on it and maybe go and take a deep breath, count to 10 and think, oh wait, they were right.
I think, like, as a practical piece of advice, if you're in recovery and you're also struggling with money, bring that to a meeting and listen to what is being said. And if it's about alcohol, just replace that with money.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right?
Hallelujah.
The message will be sent to you.
Right. I thank you for saying sent to you and wiggling your fingers, because I think one of the
wiggling your finger
like this.
Well, yeah, like that.
I feel like we're gonna do a psychic reading.
Yeah.
Coming out.
She got sued. So what I'm thinking of is, for folks who may struggle with like the word God or a sense of a higher power, I think one of the things that comes up for me is that you don't have to believe in, say, some guy in the sky, right? But for example, if one of the analogies that I use is like, if you can believe that you can love someone, then you can believe that a God exists, right? Because we don't know whether or not love exists. You can tell me how it feels for you. I can tell you that I have a feeling and it makes me feel compelled to say this thing. And all the ways that we can defend love, we can defend an idea of a God. And so with what I'm trying to get at here is like, I think one of the first things that happens for me whenever I center any decision on God is that things start to slow down, right? And to your point, to your wiggling your fingers, like, and the answer does come. But I think like answers can only come when we're like capable of listening to them.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. There's
I
like
feel like
a
they're
willingness.
I always say my higher power is around every corner, and sometimes I just walk right past. But the gift of my higher power is that my higher power is always persistent and wanting me to connect in the way that I need to connect. And so maybe not this corner, but the next corner. I just had to throw that in.
Yeah, that reminds me of this like thing that I always think of, like the universe, my higher power, God, whatever it is for you, is presenting this challenge to you, to me, so I can learn from it. And that challenge is going to keep coming up every time until I have learned from it.
It's kind of like with me derailing. Like I think this is a gift to Anthony.
What is
to learn how to deal with life on life's terms.
Well, you know what this reminds me of is drinking dreams or using dreams. Right?
I'm a using dream.
No. Well, if you would let me talk.
I'm a fever dream.
Well, I think about, for example, like I've had experiences that feel like using dreams. And what I mean by that is that if I've had a using dream, right, typically it'll happen because maybe at some point throughout the week I had like a little thought that was like, oh, maybe I should, and then I'll have this dream and it'll be like the fucking apocalypse, and then I'll wake up and I'll feel so much gratitude that it didn't happen. And that to me feels like a gift. Right? Like I got to learn a lesson in my sleep that I didn't have to learn by actually going out and using. right? And so I think similarly, like in prayer or in situations that you talk about that arise, like that is a gift, right? Like sometimes, I was saying this to a friend earlier, we may think that an experience that we're having is novel, right? I may think like, oh, you said something, it hurt my feelings. That's somehow novel. But the truth is, I think that was always sleeping underneath the surface, and that it was just waiting for something to kind of poke at it before it kind of surface, and then you can learn, right? Because as you were saying, a lesson will continue to repeat itself until we've learned from it. I don't know if you actually said that or if those are the pieces I put together, but I see you're thinking.
No, we said it.
Oh, yeah,
I thought it was
You're
great.
like, no, you're like, no, I did say that, and it was great.
Well,
Yeah.
the words that were coming up
Yeah.
for me were unresolved childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Which is like, we can just always bring it back to unresolved childhood trauma.
100%. 100%.
And then after we deal with that, it goes to sex.
No, I mean, it's all the same.
Yes,
it's all the same. I mean, that's so, but yeah, childhood trauma.
Yeah. And a lot of like bad money behaviors come from potential, people that you were surrounded by. You just, maybe here's the compassion piece. Maybe you were never taught how to manage money in an appropriate way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
or to you, right.
But now you are an adult.
Yeah.
And now it is incumbent upon you to find the resources that you need to learn what you need to learn so you can do what you need to do.
So you got to do the work.
You got to do it.
You do. You have to do the work. So with the last 8 minutes that we have of airtime, let's talk a little bit about what does it look like to start doing the work. And so we've kind of gestured toward this, and we've talked about values, and we've talked about shame. And say, Manny, if someone is listening today and they wanted to start something like in the next 5 minutes, what would you have them do?
Let's get it started.
All right. I want you to download your credit card or bank statement, and I want you with a highlighter to highlight all of your discretionary spending. So not things you had to pay for to survive.
Okay.
Right? So your Netflix, your Hulu, your, I don't know.
Whatever
it is, not like your phone bill, not your rent, like all of those other things that you're spending money on, and just add it up. Just add it up, because you need to start with like a basis foundation of like where we stand today. Don't judge yourself, just collect the information, right? Then if you're savvy enough, use like a spreadsheet or even just a piece of paper, just write down like, okay, these are the things that I do need to spend, right? And then you've divided discretionary from non-discretionary. And then from there, we can start mapping out like, okay, how much is a reasonable amount for me to spend on dining out?
Right.
So you can have some realistic parameters, because a lot of us, I think, who fall into a bad money habit are living or operating with these, it's like a fantasy, right? Like your income in your mind says this, but the reality of your situation says something else.
Yeah.
So it's like early sobriety, right? Like that truth serum, like it hurts a little bit maybe, right? Because it's something you haven't been looking at. But when you look at it with non-judgment and with compassion, and you say like, I'm willing to make changes, but I just got to find out where I'm at.
Right.
Like those two things should keep you pretty busy the first week.
I love that. And, one of the things I'd love for you to talk about in like the last couple of minutes is, what are some of the benefits of working with someone when you get down to like the meat and potatoes? Like, what are some of the benefits of like having, say, a financial coach or et cetera?
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a financial coach. It just has to be someone that you trust and that you can be accountable to, right? There's one of our steps that where we share, like, here's you just share.
Are we talking about the 4th and 5th?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay,
share it with someone you trust, but like start removing the shroud that you've put around your money and be honest and vulnerable if you can. I know it's hard, but once you start doing that, you start removing the power it has on you, like the shame and the guilt you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. One of the things that we've talked about before is that for most of our conversations tend to come back to God, and most of our conversations come back to just telling the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's what the call here is. Like, one of the best ways of starting, at least in what I'm hearing, is just tell the fucking truth about how you're spending your money, what your motivations are.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need help to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. It's being honest with yourself is really like the ticket here.
Yeah.
Right. Be honest about how you are actually spending your money. And I think everything gets a little bit easier at that point.
Yeah.
Because then you're willing to try new behaviors. But if you're unwilling to like recognize that a behavior you've been participating in is bad for you,
right.
which would be a lie to yourself, then you're never going to get better.
Yeah. And I this is this is a plug for sponsorship or working with like a mentor, is that I think the first person we generally lie to is ourselves, right? Like that's one of the first ways that anyone kind of arrives at a lie is by convincing themselves first, you know? And so, yeah, that's just a plug for accountability. And I think, at least as a person in recovery, accountability is very important for me, you know, like that's why I have a sponsor that, go ahead.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, it's really easy for me to be like, I'm lying to myself, but like, be compassionate at the same time. Like, you can hold two things and be like, yeah, I've lied to myself all this whole time, but I'm compassionate with myself because now I'm putting in the time and effort to heal this part of my dysfunction.
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think what's just happened is like you get a sense of like how I sometimes talk to myself.
Like, damn, Anthony,
I know.
Relax. We'll get through it.
Anthony, breathe. I know. It's so funny. Like, I was just talking to the person I've been seeing, and I was like, man, like, I can't wait until like I'm done with graduate school and I can just like exist and like have interest. And it's like, I can do that now. You know what I mean?
You're
like,
doing
I can.
Right now.
I know. But like, the takeaway is.
I hope you're interested in this.
No. I absolutely love this. What I'm saying is that like I can feel so rigid, and that's like something that I like. It's just it's
I hear you.
Yeah, I can be really rigid around a bunch of other things, and that's that same thinking has showed up around my spending sometimes, which is like sometimes I can be so rigid that I will spend by like closing my eyes. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just gonna, whatever it is, I don't want to know what it is. That's more than you need to know about me. And so before we start wrapping up, Manny, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me on YouTube, Manny Money Happy Coach. I think that'll be the easiest way to get started. You can subscribe to my channel, and then in there you'll find ways to contact me. But Manny Money Happy Coach on YouTube. Right.
So that's www.youtube.com/@Manny Money Happy Coach.
Manny Money Happy Coach. Man. Okay, nobody?
No, we were good. I mean, you were the Beyonce.
So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth.
Financial. Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
Yes, and tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yes. And thank you for those you all watching.
Yeah. Oh, and you are you looking at me to do the 15-minute thing?
Yeah. Exactly,
okay. So if you aren't aware, once we stop rolling and recording, filming, we continue to record for podcast exclusive content. So we'll continue talking with Manny 15 minutes after are there cameras off, and you can find that content wherever you listen to podcasts. And I think that's it.
Shout out to Bernadette.
Oh, shout out to Bernadette, who's visiting right now.
Yes, exactly.
Another big thank you to Manny for coming on.
You're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Another wonderful conversation.
Yes, I learned a lot.
Me too. I wrote it down. I was like, oh, okay.
Should we hold hands?
I don't think we have to do that. That's my least favorite part. You're not coming back on.
Tell me what comes up for you when you do.
Tell the trauma. Okay, I think it's a wrap. Go.